the August meeting of the Coastal Resiliency Commission for the town of Madison. First item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes. Have you all seen the minutes from the prior one? Because I'm not sure that I have. Because normally what happens in the Dave Anderson world, when he sends out the meeting notice, he attaches the prior month's minutes, but if they were there, I missed them. So should we, did anybody see them, or should we move on and approve them next month when we have them distributed?
That probably makes sense. I don't remember either whether
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I know I didn't see them. I was just wondering if I was the one that missed them and everybody else saw them, or if not. So we'll bypass that and pick it up at the September meeting. Just to go over the schedule for tonight. The first thing on the agenda is we're going to discuss the Board of Selectmen meeting that occurred just a little while ago, where they reviewed the floodplain ordinance. After that, we're going to have a discussion, and I believe that Peggy Lyons is going to join our call, and she wants to and I don't know a lot of the details about this, but this was just added to the agenda today, discussing establishing a coastal resiliency reserve fund, and which is, if I understand what her thinking is or what her planning is, it would dovetail nicely with the third item, which is a discussion of the projects that we have for the Coastal Resiliency Commission, and Graham's been working on that with the technical group, and so it sounds like if she's trying to establish something, then maybe we would talk about the projects in light of what her thinking is. And then to get all that going and to update the town and others about what we're doing, I've talked to Walter a few times recently. And so and the whole idea of communicating what we're doing, what our purpose is, how we should be interacting with the citizenry or the Board of Selectmen or the town engineer, or whatever else is going on in town, and how the CRC can be effective in communicating where we are and what we're trying to do. So if there's no other further discussion, any comments or questions about the agenda? Okay, if there's not, then
one question that
sure,
possibly Al may know the answer to. I thought the agenda had to be posted 24 hours in advance.
I sent it to, I'll answer that. Al can answer, should it be? And I'll tell you that I sent it to Lauren yesterday afternoon, and when it actually got posted, I'm not sure, but she had it yesterday afternoon.
Oh.
So it should have been, so
Good.
assuming everything worked the way it's supposed to work, given that she said, get it to me by the end of the day, which I did, and then she put it up, which I believe she did because she had asked for it, then we should be good.
Good. Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the Board of Selectmen meeting, where they focused on the whole meeting wasn't about the floodplain ordinance. There was a section of the meeting that included their discussion with the on the floodplain ordinance. If you have seen it or heard about it, it was the four selectmen. Peggy recused herself, as you probably all know, and so the four remaining selectmen had a discussion with the town council about the most current floodplain ordinance that we had submitted for their review, and it was a fairly lengthy discussion, but it was pretty clear that they were of no mind to do anything as far as sending it back and asking us to make some changes, or because I'm not sure I don't think they actually had in mind what changes they'd like to see. But it was pretty clear that they weren't interested in approving the current version, nor suggesting at that time, they may have thoughts now, but at that time, the 4 selectmen that were involved didn't really seem to have what we should be doing, and just as counsel or direction or feedback. So, and then they decided not to take any action, which was disappointing given all the effort and work that's gone into it. And I don't know what I'll ask in a minute what your all thoughts are on this, but I was disappointed by it. And there was a letter in the source a couple of editions ago that spoke to, if you read it, I looked at it, I thought, that's what I would have written. And I was really disappointed at the inaction that they tabled it, basically. I don't know that they actually voted it down, but they just said, we're not going to do anything. And so as a result of that, we're going to stay with the current outdated FPO, which never was written in light of the coastal sea rise that we're seeing, and really needs to be updated. But we kind of we seem to have missed an opportunity to move forward on that. I have to be very honest, though, and this isn't to bash anybody over the head. I was disappointed that Al wasn't, who is our Board of Selectmen liaison, but he spoke against it, or against the concepts that were in it. And I was disappointed because I hadn't really heard that before. I was more surprised than I was disappointed. But, the reality is some things, happen, and my hope is that we will move forward quickly. And I'm thinking about things positively, because when I see this idea, when I see our next subject, and when I see the projects that Graham's group has put together, it speaks to, okay, you know what, the FPO, it was a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's not necessarily dead, but it's just dormant. It's been put aside for I'm not sure how long. It'll rise up again at some point, and we'll be there to help shepherd it through. But in the meantime, we'll be able to move forward and move on to these very specific projects that Graham's group has put together, and also talk to Peggy about the fund that she's talking about. I actually spoke to her about 2 or 3 weeks ago about this, and it was very broad. And she said, look, there's likely to be money available to help us with these things. Your group, the CRC, is going to be important in doing that. And then some things may have changed, or some things may have broken favorably for the town. And so she wants to communicate that to us today, or give us at least some insight as to what the planning might be. So that's the next couple of items on the agenda. I did start this by saying I'm interested in other people's comments about the Board of Selectmen, the 4 that were there in that meeting. I'm not interested in rehashing things and making it a big deal, because we are going to move forward. We are going to do the right thing and move on. But I'm also curious about what you all think.
I just have a quick question.
Sure, Wayne.
Did we engage that consultant to update the field? There was a $10,000 fund that we had. And did we engage them, or what?
Graham can probably answer that better. We are. Oh, Graham, go ahead and just answer it.
Yeah, I'm changing computers here in a second.
We got Jeff twice.
I'm on twice. Am I getting feedback?
Yes.
You can either not see me or hear me.
We can see it. But
okay, let me.
You must have 2 cameras on.
I do. I'm trying to. I got a new laptop, and it's like.
Okay, now we're back to the.
Okay, we're back to my my lovely. I'll give you a better chair.
That's.
Yeah, so the consultant that we were going to hire, he's actually left his current employer, and he's on his own as a consultant. So he asked us to. He didn't feel comfortable coming in front of us before the that transition. So we still have the $10,000. We haven't executed it. I think last time we discussed possibly expanding that scope beyond just the 10,000 to do more outreach stuff.
So quick question, while you're right in the middle of that.
Yep.
So were we more interested in the person's firm or were we more interested in the person?
It was more the person because he had done the original study. He was the guy at Malone McBroom. So he has the expertise and he knows what's going on. He's done most of these in the state that have been done. So he's truly a subject matter expert.
Yeah. So does that mean that we might engage his new firm?
Yes, that would be the implication. So potentially, if he's interested. I asked him to come tonight, but he couldn't make it because he had another meeting.
Okay.
But he will show up in September. We could discuss it. If we do expand the scope of work and, we talked about doing a broader scope and maybe more of an outreach type thing and some other things.
Yeah.
We'd have to probably go out with an RFP anyway, because he's no longer with his old firm and it's beyond the $10,000 threshold of the town that you have to get solutions.
Yeah.
And I did speak to the people that did the Greenwich resiliency plan and their outreach, and they, that's as a firm, and they just had a very successful update to their plan.
Yep.
So as an alternate, they would be interested in coming before us and kind of explaining what they did. So
that would be great.
Yeah.
So,
and, I'm sorry, go ahead. Wait.
So does our RFP change given the fact that the town didn't take up the FPL?
I don't.
No.
Yeah.
Wayne, could I jump in? I think we're off on another track. This is the subject of a longer discussion, I think,
That was just
about our RFP. I mean, we could probably take a half an hour on this subject to sort of since Murphy left and who's Murphy and who's Jones, all of that's going to take some time. We need to look at the old RFP and all of that. So, we can do it, but I don't think we should do it now.
But the point of the story, at least from what I understand, is the way the question was put is, Wayne, it is not related to the FPO in the sense that what happens with the FPO isn't contingent on Murphy or not. It may be down the road, maybe he can help us refine it, but the current state of the FPO and where it sits is not affected by this.
Okay. Good. Thanks for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Can we get back to what we started, Hank?
Sure. Yeah, we haven't moved on. I was just trying to thinking about. Yeah, I'm still interested in people's thoughts on where we are with the FPO and that experience, and they're thinking about the next steps.
Okay, I'm happy to chime in.
So maybe I could interject just before you talk, Woody. So I appreciate what Hank said. I personally, I think I kind of blame ourselves more than anyone else for this, because I think we didn't do the outreach properly. I think we assumed that everyone knew what we knew. And the reality is it became very clear that they did not know as much as we knew about the subject. I think, it was helpful, but I think we need to kind of go back and revisit how we rolled out this information, so I think we were remiss in doing that. And I understand people, I was disappointed, but I think, there's been some positive things because everyone's much more aware of this, what's going on right now. And it's at the top. So I think it was an opportunity to do more, so that's my 2 cents.
And by the way, if I can just quickly, and then Woody you can have the floor. I agree with you in the sense that I was talking to Walter this past week or so, and we were talking about the communications group. And I said, we were out there and a lot of people wrote letters and some emails and, those, but I agree with you. I'm not sure that I said, going forward, we need to be smarter about leading with the communication side, right? If we're going to do some technical stuff and some planning stuff, the lead with group though has to be communications to get out in front and meet with the parties and communicate our message so that they understand the value that we're talking about and trying to bring to helping the town. So huge lesson learned. And Walter identified that right away. But I think it's something that, and I agree with you, Graham, when you say not necessarily that we were at fault or it was our problem. It was just things just got going, and we were focused on the policy side and trying to, move it along without being able to really focus on the communication side. And so, next time around, we're going to lead, we're going to do all that work, but we're going to lead first out the door. It's going to be the communications of this whole thing, whatever it might be.
So
So
Hank,
thank you.
Hank, say hello to Peggy. Hi,
Oh,
Peggy.
Peggy. Hi, Peggy. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, yeah, thank you for inviting me.
I mentioned it's on the agenda, but I mentioned earlier when we first started that you'd be joining us, and that the two things, right? We're talking about the Board of Selectmen meeting, which you had recused yourself from properly, and we're trying to continue that, but I did mention in the agenda we had talking about your item on the agenda, but also right after that is a listing of projects that Graham has and how those discussions probably will meld into one. So we're looking forward to that. But we want to just finish up our talk on the Board of Selectmen meeting, and then we'll move right to that, which is sort of what I'm anxious to do, only so it's part of the next step going forward kind of thing. So that's what I'm interested in, having the commission move forward and look for the next thing we can help out on.
Mhm.
So Woody, you had the floor.
Yep, thank you. I jotted some notes down, so I'm basically going to read from this. Well over 1 year ago, the CRC took on the task of updating our floodplain ordinance with the full support of the Board of Selectmen. We used the DEEP model provided model ordinance, and which was adopted by nearly every town to update their floodplain ordinances, and we worked in conjunction with DEEP to take recent sea level rise predictions into account, since the model was already 2 years old. Also referenced was Madison's 2016 Coastal Resiliency Plan, adopted by the Board of Selectmen, which also recommended both an increase to a 5 or 10-year look back and an increase greater than the BFE plus 1 foot that was in the state building code. This is from, now I'm ad-libbing, this is from 2016. It was adopted by the Board of Selectmen. This was out there for everyone to see and to know about and to think about, and it was adopted. We firmly believe that the document produced by the CRC achieved our goal in providing Madison with increased coastal resiliency and language completely in line with a majority of the other coastal towns. Diane Ivkovic, DEEP's NFIP coordinator, approved it. I repeatedly went over things with her. Even Attorney Gelderman at the meeting called it a well thought out proposal. However, we also realized that the process of adoption would be an iterative one, requiring back and forth to achieve an ordinance that would be acceptable to the BOS. After our initial presentation, it became clear that changes to the look back period in particular would be necessary, and we made several attempts to soften the introduction of a longer period. While there were a few other concerns brought to our attention, we were under the impression that with further modifications, the updated floodplain ordinance would move forward, as it contained many significant updates to our existing ordinance and would be much more in line with all other towns along the Connecticut coastline. Imagine our surprise and dismay when the Board of Selectmen decided on June 28th to summarily reject the entire document, rather than continue to refine it so it could be implemented. We may be the only town along our coastline without an updated floodplain ordinance. To add insult to injury, the comments by Al Goldberg, who is our Board of Selectmen liaison, shocked us all. Al had ample time during the previous 15 months to inform us of his concerns, but never said anything about not supporting our task. In fact, he was supportive and provided guidance on our presentation. He then publicly, without warning, ridiculed our efforts with comments like, I just assumed that we would not make any changes in the ordinance and let each individual property owner decide what they were going to do and when they were going to do it. I don't see why town government needs to be beating them with a stick trying to get them to do it. It's their own property that they need to protect and think about, and I think that they can do that better than town government. So my reaction at this point is, I don't see any need to make changes. It is unclear to us how we can move forward with any policy updates without a supportive Board of Selectmen, which we clearly do not have. These updates always have pushback, but to abrogate the responsibility to enact regulations to cope with increasing sea level is just plain wrong. Thank you.
Thanks, Woody. Any other comments from anyone on the board?
Yeah, I'd like
on
to
the commission?
Could you hear me okay, Hank?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Walter, yeah, sure.
And just so we're clear on this, because Woody read a very articulate piece, and when he says we and our, it's him. It's me, not the commission's views. We weren't necessarily surprised. And just be very careful about that when we speak broadly. He's one member of the commission. And I think what was surprising to us was that it was a large core of folks who came out against this proposal. We didn't know that as we presented it back last September. We did not know there was a strong opposition among residents to this proposal. And when you move to something through an elective body, which is going to choose an ordinance, which is really legislation, it's important to know what the neighbors feel, what the residents feel. There was tremendous opposition to this proposal, which only came out at the end from many, many residents. And obviously the commission was supporting it, but we were in many ways sort of a lone voice out there in support of this without putting the selectmen in a position where they had broad public support. So what I would like to think about us is what we're talking about later, go on some other different projects. See if we, as you said, we can build support for those projects. The way you need to get the immediate residents, broader groups to support an ordinance, to support any change, but particularly one which requires legislation by the Board of Selectmen. And I don't think we thought we were going to get the opposition, but when we got it, it was very strong. And we weren't in a position to help our elected officials really deal with that. And I think we just try some others, see if we can be successful, and then come back to this. And it's really about getting neighbors who live right there who say they're in favor of the ordinance, not neighbors who are just against the ordinance. It's not an easy thing to do. And there were some neighbors who had been in a fight over this with with Woody for a long time. And we didn't know that. The members of this commission, Woody knew it, but we didn't know that. And that spurred a lot of negative reaction to this ordinance. So I think we should not look at this as the end of anything. It's just a time to have what we use as a step back, look at some other projects that we can get through, maybe through regulation rather than ordinance, and then come back to this in some period of time.
I agree with you in that. I don't consider this a step back. It's like I said earlier, it's a lesson learned. There's a couple of unfortunate parts about it, but in reality, the takeaway from it all is that, we need to recognize where we are, what we're dealing with, what we're messaging, and build a better consensus than we had. And so I'm looking forward to taking on the next projects and building that consensus and being more involved in that. So I'm not stewing about the whole thing. I'm thinking that all these things that we learned, let's take advantage of those and move on and do what's best for the town. So that's, who else has a comment relative to the Board of Selectmen? If anybody, if not, we can move on to item number 2. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Item number 2 is discussion of the Board of, let's see here. Discussion of establishing, or it's item number 3, I guess. I'm not sure what number it is. Discussion of establishing a coastal resiliency reserve fund. And that was added to the agenda by the first selectman, Peggy Lyons. So Peggy, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I think that actually your conversation about, the direction of the commission and some of the feedback from the community, this is a good segue into this, because I think some of the things that came out is that there is a demand in town to address a lot of the infrastructure issues, right? All the homeowners down there are affected. And so you gain, I think, a lot of goodwill by focusing on things that can be productive and helpful to homeowners down in that area. And I know that this has been an objective you set out when you started your commission. And so my thinking is that this has been talked about. Branford has established one of these coastal resiliency funds. And the legislature recently allows for this money now to be, invested as well. So if you have a fund sitting there, you can actually earn more than 0.005% or whatever on the money. And I think it shows action and commitment to addressing some of the infrastructure challenges that our town is going to be facing. One of the things I was kind of surprised about was that I went back and looked at the Coastal Resiliency Plan more recently. And, a lot of those projects are not in our capital planning program. And this is where we kind of have some issues, I think, in terms of planning overall, because we do a 5-year capital planning project. But let's face it, most infrastructure projects are 5 or 10-year projects, right? You have to start thinking ahead beyond the 5 years. And so I have asked our Public Works Department to look at the Coastal Resiliency Plan and start adopting them into the capital improvement plan, because we're going through this process right now. The departments come to me, we make a decision about what goes into the recommended plan, and then that ultimately becomes the plan that goes to the CIP committee, and then they make decisions about priorities. So the timing right now is important for us to kind of choose what projects would make sense. And then fortunately crossed paths, Graham and I talked, and he said, well, you guys have actually taken a deeper dive than Public Works is just starting to look at this on these projects. So thinking about all this and knowing we're going to have to spend money over the next 10 years to start addressing these, I think setting up this reserve fund is a great use of our undesignated fund balance. We still have like $7 million to spend technically over what we're required to save. The Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen have been, over the last 6 months, we've taken money out of the fund balance to address like our fleet. We did special appropriations for our fleet. We just did $1 million for the pension fund, and we still have $7 million. And so this is I think a really good use of those funds to get this set up for us. And so it creates now a line item in the CIP capital planning process, and enables us to start really identifying projects. And then you can use some of this money to fund those. It's kind of starting a savings account. And our thought was, and I think there'll be support on the Board of Finance for establishing this. It's been talked about before, and our finance director is a big advocate for this. This was on her list of things she thought was a good use for our undesignated fund balance. And so in talking internally, we thought recommending setting up the fund and then a $500,000 special appropriation. And what we could use that money for is to start pulling together planning documents for specific projects, because right now there's no money for this. And the good thing about doing this now is it also sets us up for all the infrastructure money that could be coming down from both the federal and state level. And we just saw they passed the infrastructure bill a couple of days ago in the Senate. And there are a lot of different grants that are coming out more targeting specific resiliency projects and infrastructure projects. And, to get those, you have to have something that's approved by, your municipality, and also something that ideally, it doesn't necessarily have to be shovel ready, but you really have to have a good idea of what you're trying to do, right? And so this gives us some money to spend out of there for planning dollars. And it gives us a way to save for future projects. And so my thought was going to the Board of Selectmen on our August 23rd meeting and having the board, recommend that the Board of Finance set up this reserve account. So this is actually under the Board of Finance regulations. And then we would also recommend a $500,000 special appropriation, or we would approve a special appropriation for the fund, and then it would go to the Board of Finance for their approval in September. You know, in talking with our Public Works Department and then also with Graham, we also identified some priority projects, and it was kind of nice because our Public Works top projects were exactly what your team had come up with also. And there's one I think we want to actually put into CIP, which means that it would be something we want to accomplish in the next 5 years. With the idea that we would go after grant money for this. And that's the drainage issue on Island Avenue and Tuxas and Middle Beach Road. So if we get the special appropriation approved, we can actually start getting some engineering design money and putting together like a phased in project to address a lot of those flooding issues in that area. And that seemed to be one of the top projects that you guys had identified. And so we thought, so now we have like, you know, a real project that I think the last storm this summer highlighted tremendously the issues there. Just this last storm we had, you know, with the flooding, it receded by the end of the day, but it kind of just magnified and highlighted that, you know, it's an ongoing issue down in a highly trafficked area of the town. So that's why my thought was, you know, if I'm assuming, you know, if you agree with the reserve fund, it would be great to get, you know, a recommendation for you to set up the reserve fund. And then it kind of helps, you know, set up your commission then to really dig deeper into the projects, put a priority capital plan together over a 10-year period. And then eventually we'd start adopting those into the 5-year town capital plan. And then also it sets us up for grants.
Right.
So that was my thinking. And I kind of wanted to be opportunistic because we're doing CIP right now. It's good to get this going now. So it gets into the planning process this November for the next year's budget.
Well, the timing sounds great. So that's good. Yeah. And as you said, we have projects that you're familiar with and align with the town's thinking already. So we should probably be able to execute on this fairly quickly. Graham, help me if I'm overstating things.
No, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. Peggy, would you like us to make a formal recommendation of the commission to recommend creating this fund, or is that something?
Yeah, I think that would be great. You know, I think, you know, just a formal recommendation to that the town establish a coastal resiliency fund would be great. And then that way, you know, we've got your support, our board will be supportive, and I think the Board of Finance, I think will be supportive, but it's good to always have like, you know, everybody in alignment.
Yep. No, it sounds great. It sounds exactly like what we need to do in the sense that we've been at the place where, okay, well, let's think about this project, not talking about the FPO, but thinking about other projects. And we have a consultant coming in to help us with updating the plan. But if we actually have something that's in the shorter term, 1, 2, 3 years out, whatever that might be, to actually say, okay, there's actually a place where we can go and a place where we can get a chance of getting some funds, and even better if it's funds designated for this particular area. You know, knowing that, okay, we had X amount last year, we did something, and now we have Y amount, but we still have something, and we can still go to the Board of Selectmen and the finance group and say, we want to execute on this particular thing that's in this fund, and everybody, and explain it all to them, and then get the go ahead, you know, ideally. So no, that would be great. That would be a great process to think in terms of start it, keep it going, keep it funded over the years, and just keep improving along the way by knowing that there are funds available that are specific to this effort. That would be ideal.
Yeah, I think Branford was a leader in creating this fund several years ago, and they've implemented several projects. So I know Jim Finch, the finance guy over there, is a leader on this topic. So with that, I'd like to make a motion, if this is the appropriate time, Hank, to make a motion, you think?
Sure, yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen create a coastal resiliency fund in the amount of $500,000, if that's the specific number is good. that could be drawn upon to do engineering and construction projects under our purview.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, further discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
raise your hand or say aye. So get all-
Aye.
everybody,
Everybody's blank on the screen.
yeah, all right.
Back.
I've got my hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back.
Okay, I think we're,
That's an aye.
yeah, okay, so I think we're good. So we'll do that. Do you need anything in writing, or is this enough?
I think this is enough. I think it would be good to have, you come to our 23rd meeting if you're available, or somebody from just the Resiliency Committee to echo the
Sure.
support. And
Sure.
I think this will help, the image as well, to be honest, because that's, the commission is taking action on some of the infrastructure issues too. So it'll show a lot of momentum in this direction, and I think it'll be good.
Oh, and I think, yeah, no, I think you're exactly right, and that's part of what we were talking about earlier. Getting the story of what we're trying to do out, so that people are more aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and also get more opportunities to hear from not only town officials but from the public about, here's what their priorities might be, or what they really want to get done, or a wish list if somebody has one. So no, I think the better, I said earlier, I think before you were on, we're going to be doing a lot better job of leading with the communication side of this. And so so this is good.
Okay, great. And I'll make sure then Lauren sends you the invite for the 23rd. We'll have it on the agenda that night. Okay.
Thank you.
Is that a PM? That's an evening?
Yeah, it's an evening, and it is going to be, we're going back to full Zoom, because the just wearing masks during a hybrid meeting in town hall was not appealing. So, because we do have a mask mandate in place again. And so we're going to go back to Zoom for a little bit,
Mhm.
So it'll be easier, obviously, for people to attend that. So, okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I think this is going to be a great thing for the community, and I'm hopeful that this is going to set us up to get some federal and state dollars to support some of our projects. So
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Thanks, Peggy.
Graham, do you want to talk about some of the projects that are on the list? That's the
Yeah.
next thing on the agenda.
Yeah, I can share my
Just
screen.
some of the highlights.
Yeah. Can you, are you seeing this?
Yep, there it is.
Okay, good. So it's basically divided into, and I think I shared this with some of you in the past.
Yes, you have, with the whole
Okay.
group, I think.
Right, and this is just like a working document, and this is kind of created with the input from the technical subcommittee and some input for some of the town staff and Dave Anderson and other people. So, but it's by no means a comprehensive document. This does include some of the projects that were also in the 2016 study, but it's subject to input from the, where we go with the future study. And so the list is obviously, the first page is infrastructure projects that are, quote unquote, construction projects. Second column, location, ownership. These are primarily public entities owned by the town, obviously. The issue at hand, and then the priorities, and the other column. I don't know if you can read that. So I tried to prioritize this, or some kind of judgment of what, priorities, the timeline, and also the costs, and they're high, low, medium, short, long, ongoing, and low, medium, high. So as we said, the two projects that in terms of came out of priority, and the nature of resiliency planning is these things are generally long-term. We're talking 20, 30 years out. So there aren't that many that are urgent, which is good for the town, because that means we've been proactive in a lot of our stuff. But there are several projects that I've rated here as high. And again, this is somewhat subjective. But the intersection, as Peggy mentioned, the intersection of Island Avenue, Middle Beach Road is a is a chronic problem that needs to be addressed short term. And the other problem is the seawall, which the town got a grant from the state, which is great. So the two high priority projects are potentially going to move forward. We will need some engineering consulting to assist with some of the cost estimating and preparing the plans. And I know we talked about hiring a consultant to update the plan, but we may, if we get additional funds, we may want to expand their scope of work and also, start doing some preliminary engineering on the first one at least. Does anyone have a question on these and the projects, this initial set of projects?
No, that's fine. And Graham, so the money for these is coming from already? We have some state money for this stuff?
The seawall project, there was a $750,000 grant that we received.
Yeah, that's good news. And and then Island Avenue would be coming from the town funds.
Well, we'd at least prepare the design plan. I think the thinking is that if we got some money going, we can prepare the plans and start doing more planning just for some of these projects. Some of these are longer term, type things. A lot of these fall in the purview of the Beach and Rec.
Right.
So, and they've asked us to attend the next meeting. I'm going to go to their next meeting, kind of update them on what we're doing. And if anybody else would like to join, it's probably a Zoom call now, I guess.
Sounds it.
Yeah.
Did you say, Graham, are you saying the Island Avenue is not Beach? Is that Beach and Rec?
No, but a lot of the projects, a lot of the infrastructure in town is owned by the parks, beaches, and seawalls.
Yeah.
That project is being spearheaded by Public Works. We are going to have to figure out funding once we know how much it's going to cost, and we'll go after some grants for that. Or we might have to put it into CIP and just have it, start saving for it basically. But at least right now it's not even in the process.
Right.
And I would imagine a big part of this being effective is getting these things, identifying them, doing the homework, and then getting them in the process.
Exactly. And the more identified and approved as a need for the town, the easier it is for us to go after grants.
Right.
And some of these will be somewhat controversial or not, how we fund them. The Circle Beach Road project, potential project here, that was in the 2016 study, but it's going to be very expensive to raise that road. And, that's a decision, how we fund that, or with grants, or, the advisability of, what we do there. It's somewhat subjective. I think the consultant even indicated that area would, 30 years from now, that will be difficult to save that. But that's just some of the complex issues we'll have to deal with.
Right. Well, Graham, and that's kind of if you look at, say, Garnet Park Road also, which is maybe what I was surprised when I talked to a couple of folks from Deep was that they said, sometimes raising a road was bad for the marshland. They said, actually, if you're allowed through, and they're the experts, would actually help the wetlands. So you could have people who live in that area, those residents supporting the project, and you might have others who are concerned about the wetlands supporting the project. Again, this is something you'd have to do and get support before we went forward to spend money on these things. But of those two, which you would say Garnet Park comes ahead of Circle Beach? Is that the way this looks, or they're both medium priority? Is that what it is?
Most medium priorities, yeah.
Yeah. So that would be something for this commission to think about as we went forward, whether we put one of those as a higher priority.
One thing just to comment, because I talked about this quite a bit with Public Works, is we're redoing the bridge there through grants. That project is slated to start next year. And so what I think is good about this conversation is now Public Works can say they know there's this other project that might be tying into that bridge, right, with the road. And so we can be more thoughtful about the design of that bridge to account for the fact that we might need to raise or change the elevation. So, I spoke to John about that we might actually need some money out of the reserve fund to have an engineer look at that, so that we don't spend money on a bridge, put a whole new bridge in there 2 years from now, and then all of a sudden realize it's not the right elevation if we raise the road, right? So having that kind of more thoughtful planning process, I think, is going to be really help us with this.
Right, exactly. And the other thing you mentioned that I don't think we talked about yet was that the town, I believe, is looking to hire a new planner to replace Dave, and also an environmental planner that will maybe be a liaison, for us or our staff, so we have just improved communication internally.
Yeah. And we actually, as of tomorrow, we can announce, I can't tell you the details. We do have a new town planner now.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, great.
So
Okay,
you'll know
great.
the details tomorrow, and then that person will be teed up soon to start the hiring process for the environmental planner. So we'll make sure you get the kind of formal announcement when that's finalized.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Dave would be hard to be replaced, but I'm sure you got some top-notch candidates.
We did, and I have to say that we were very lucky because it's very hard to hire planners right now, and we were not very optimistic, and I think we came out to a pretty good place. So
Great, that's good news.
Yeah, no, well, Madison's a good place to live, to work, I'm sure. For a planner, that is. For everybody, and a planner. So the second page this is kind of much more global, and these are not necessarily construction projects, but this might be a little bit of a reach. But these are like societal and global environmental things that we could work with as a commission. And we haven't really talked about it as this group of the things we could do, but these are like long range planning type things. And I think I envision this to be more the communication group role potentially, and like information informing people. And some of these are very low cost to implement. And these go a little beyond the traditional coastal resiliency, but these are more resiliency type projects in general. So I would like to get some people's input, and if you think these are our purview or other people's purview.
So which ones are we looking at specifically, Graham? Give me an example.
Just like information. Let's see. For example, water use reduction programs. No, that's not necessarily coastal. It's a resiliency thing, but it's not necessarily something that
Yeah.
coastal resiliency, but it's good. It's good planning.
Yeah.
Coastal and coastal and wetland type things. So
Yeah.
these are not construction projects per se, but this is information and letting people know about the resources and things like that.
Yep. Yeah, I think for our looking at some of these things to coordinate with also some of the other commissions in town, whether it be inland wetlands or conservation, to see what they're doing in this regard as well, and coordinate some of our communication.
Yeah, exactly. But being that I'm an engineer, I tend to focus on the first page. So, but yeah, I'm very excited about the opportunity to interface more, with the town public works department and things like that. As great as Dave was, he had a lot of hats, and he was a very busy guy. So, not to say the public works guys aren't also in the town engineer, but I think they're, the more we communicate with them, the better, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That would be good. When we get a new planner, a new environmental person, we'll, get a clean slate, start fresh. That would be good.
Yeah, so I'll return the control back to you, Hank.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Graham, that was great. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot. The last thing we had on the agenda for tonight was just a conversation about, which we probably already talked about tonight, but give Walter a chance to talk about his thinking on the communications for the CRC going forward. So Walter, if you haven't already told us, why don't you give us a quick review of your thinking on it?
It looks like we lost them.
Did we lose him?
It looks like.
My spreadsheet was too boring for.
Yeah, he decided he didn't want to communicate with it.
I gave him all those great tasks on the second page.
That's right. He's running out to try and find that sheet so he can start on the tasks. Well, see if we can get a hold of Walter. If not, see if he's coming back. Maybe something came up and he had to drop. Just give us 2 seconds while we see if I can get a hold of him real quick.
He's on there.
Oh, he's back on?
Yep.
He's connecting.
Okay. Walter, can you hear us?
Trying to connect.
Trying. Here we go. Here he is.
Hey, Hank, I got knocked out. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, okay. I can hear you. I don't know about everybody else.
Coming through.
Sorry about that. Did you already cover, where are you now?
No, we had finished up with Graham's technical listing, and and the last thing on the agenda was just to talk about the communications issues, plans. I know you've been updating us as we've been going through the night, and I didn't know if you had anything else that you want to present.
I just will say, we have Greg McCool and Marilyn and I have been on that with that group, along with Shannon Lewis, who's traveling. And then Wayne was kind enough to join us. Wayne's on, I think, some other subgroups policy. And Wayne had put down a whole list of things we should be thinking about, kind of topic scope. Wayne, maybe you want to just make a few comments if you can.
Yeah, it was just really to sort of organize the communications going forward, to say, what can we do, where can we do it, and at least pick and choose through a list of the things that fall under coastal resilience, and then plan it out and start to communicate with the community, and to be in some ways a resource for the community as all of this moves forward. So that was really the focus of it, to start to plan that out and work very closely with technical and work very closely with policy with what they're trying to do, so that the communications can support that.
Yeah, those are good points. And we, all of us, this whole commission, because of COVID, we sort of came together.
Oop. Did we lose him again?
Yeah.
Wow. All right, well, maybe he'll come back. Okay. If he comes back, we'll rejoin the conversation. If not, the only other thing on the agenda was general discussion on other topics. Anyone else want to bring something up? If I don't have anything, and if not, we'll adjourn and we'll catch up with Walter the next time, or maybe ask him to send us an email identifying what his plans are relative to communications. So is everybody all set? Can we adjourn? Yes, no,
Yes.
maybe?